I'm Robert Firpo Cappiello, Editor-in-Chief at Hospitality Technology, and I'm speaking with Bradley Metrock. He's the CEO of Score Publishing and the host of This Week in Voice. Bradley, welcome to Restaurant Next.
Robert, thank you for having me at Restaurant Next. It's an honor.
So, before we dive into some of the voice applications in restaurants, I think our audience would love a bit of an overview of sort of like what is voice technology, artificial intelligence assisted voice technology, and what is the interest to restaurants and to consumers?
Sure, absolutely, Robert. So, voice technology has come into the forefront over the last 3 to 4 years with the advent of Alexa, bringing that into the mainstream. But before that, that work sat on decades of work that many people did in speech recognition, natural language processing, and other associated technologies that all paved the way toward the quote unquote overnight success of Alexa. It's like any overnight success. It's not overnight at all in any way. So Alexa came out, then Google Assistant caught up. We had Siri that sort of played a role. And now countless other voice assistants. And the way I describe it is we've all lived through the advent of different technology. Everybody who's part of your conference will remember or possibly right now have people telling them, hey, this technology or that technology is the next big thing. And we've all lived through technologies that came and went, and we're not the next big thing as advertised. The thing that makes voice a little bit different is the fact that it is so human. When we're born, all we have is our mother's voice in the womb, right outside of the womb. And then we develop an inner voice that guides us for the rest of our life. So it always stood to reason that as technology evolved over time, it would arc toward being voice-driven, voice-oriented, what we call voice first. And that is starting to manifest itself in how we're seeing voice added as a new layer of how we use computing and technology.
Yeah, and as an editor, I've found myself very bullish on voice. It feels like a logical next step. And what I've enjoyed speaking with you about is that it's not just a next step, that it's happening now, and it's happening at restaurants. Could you speak a bit about voice ordering? And there are different layers to it, including voice recognition. And I think we'd love to hear about what's happening now in voice ordering and where you think that might be headed.
Sure. So, restaurants are interesting with voice. With fast food restaurants, we've had voice ordering for as long as they've existed. It's one human being tells another human being what they want to order. You don't drive up to McDonald's and, get out a piece of paper and fill it out and then slip it under the door or something. You're using your voice and you're talking to somebody else. And the change, of course, is now, we're seeing the rise of voice assistants and the implementation of nascent AI, basically, that take those orders, make sure they've got that order right, maybe upsell you along the way, and then complete the order with great efficiency. And we've seen acquisitions in this space. We've seen Sonic make an acquisition. We've seen McDonald's make an acquisition. At the fast food level, on up the food chain, we've seen partnerships, with fast casual and different sorts of restaurants sticking their toes in the water. But there's a lot of things that can be outsourced to voice assistants in terms of what goes on with how a restaurant interfaces with the customer. And it's my belief that in time, almost every single restaurant, no matter if you're, where you are on what, price of item that you're selling, the economics will eventually support integrating that into what you're doing. And, the companies that have already been doing it, are seeing great success. And coming out of the pandemic, that's one of the things you can definitely expect is the next time you're going to a Sonic, the next time, you go to a fast food joint in 2021, seeing some sort of next level integration of voice and AI should be expected rather than unexpected.
Mm-hmm. And are we seeing a positive response from consumers to the recent developments in voice ordering?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I haven't seen any evidence of backlash there or anywhere else. It's interesting because voice is being not uniformly, but it's being adopted across almost every sector imaginable, all at the same time. So we're seeing use cases in hospitality, which of course do touch restaurants in their own way. We're seeing use cases in healthcare. We're seeing use cases in automotive. We're seeing use cases in banking, and of course, we're seeing use cases in restaurants. And they're not all the same, but the lack of backlash is pretty much the same everywhere. You don't go, no one's driving up to one of the McDonald's experimenting with voice ordering and driving away because saying, wow, I wish they respected my privacy. No, they're completing their order and they're happy to do it, and they see the potential benefit in decreased error rates and some of those other sorts of things that we're already seeing as benefits.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned privacy, which reminds me of voice recognition, which is another level. And I'm curious to know, at what level is that now being adopted? I think of voice recognition as cutting edge. It's like, oh, it's Robert ordering his cheeseburger. We know what else to offer him. We know what else to we know what maybe to upsell him. It's happening now. How much is it happening now, and how likely is recognition to become the standard for voice ordering?
It's 100% likely. The question is how what that distance is, between different sorts of restaurants and different sorts of those businesses and it happening. And, you look at a company like a Starbucks. Starbucks was one of the first to experiment with Alexa integration. They've been on the forefront of a lot of different sorts of technologies, and this one was no different. And my wife is a big coffee drinker, big Starbucks fan. And you're able to use the Alexa skill, which is the nomenclature for an app on Alexa, by the way, and it will recognize your account, and you can order, and then the order sitting there, ready to go when you arrive. Now that's going to shift, and it's going to shift to, instead of that recognition of you being directly related to your account recognized and your account information saved. It will start to shift toward, it just recognizes your voice. So that technology exists. It's not perfected, but it's close. And the ability to, if I'm in a hotel, 200 miles away, and I have an Alexa device or a Google Assistant device in my room, or better yet, I've got my phone. I just use that. It already can detect my location. But rather than say, oh, well, if it's in the room, we don't have your account, can you give us your password, please, or log in, or this? Voice recognition is going to destroy that layer of interacting with technology to where, there is no remembering your password. It's just my voice will be my password. And interestingly, there is a whole battle raging right now between a whole raft of companies that all they are doing is working on making sure that your voice can never be faked. And then there's a whole bunch of other companies on the other side doing everything they can to find new ways to spoof your voice, not in a criminal way, but in a productive, utilitarian way. And all of this stuff will start to show up in restaurants. My belief is sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be keeping an eye on that. That sounds amazing. And I would think branding for restaurants will become maybe more important than ever, because you're not going to just say, I'm in the mood for a cheeseburger. You're going to want to say, I want my Wendy's double, the number one. If you're researching it or ordering from, say, a hotel room.
Absolutely. So, that's a concept called sonic branding, and that's been around for decades. Things such as the Intel Pentium. You and I are old enough to remember the bup 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 bup. At Intel ads, you could be in the other room. You're not even watching the TV. You hear that, you instantly know who it is. There's no explanation required. Those concepts, which originated out of music, all sorts of jingles. And, it's all the people who were hit songwriters who, started writing jingles, and these concepts there's a blurred line there. But every business, including restaurants of any order of magnitude, will have to engage experts or themselves think critically about the audio aspects of the brand. And if it's a narrated voice, if it's certain sound effects in association with completing an order or engaging with the brand, all that will start to become part of it. And that's not to say that voice, yes, there's voice only. You've got the echo sitting there and there's no screen. So a lot of people just sort of assume all of this is voice only. Oh, no. It's important for everyone to realize, especially with restaurants and voice, think about Sonic and McDonald's, this voice layer overlaid on top of the menu in front of you. When we talk voice, most of the time we're talking what we call multimodal, which means voice and, voice in addition to visual components. And restaurants won't be any different. They'll have to think about the Sonic branding, but the visuals will be there too.
Very cool. You've spoken to me in previous conversations about voice beyond ordering at restaurants, which wasn't something I'd thought of before, but it's fairly amazing to me how voice can enhance management, inventory, and other day-to-day tasks. I would love for you to share some of that with our audience.
Sure. So it's important to realize as well that when we talk about voice technology, we're not, you can't abstract out voice interaction with technology from the AI layer that sits underneath it. So the way I refer to voice often is that voice is the front door for AI. So your interactions with AI moving forward will often be interfacing through voice rather than the QWERTY keyboard, mouse, touching, tapping, swiping, et cetera, et cetera. So in restaurants, almost any aspect of anything that you're doing will eventually be touched and augmented by, and ideally improved by, AI. And one of the areas we're seeing right now is through inventory management. So restaurants don't like inventory management, like many other customer-facing businesses. Many are terrible at it. Mom and pops that are already stretched thin, having to layer on inventory to that is hard. And so the opportunity to introduce AI-oriented inventory management governed through this voice interaction is fascinating. It's value added, and it's happening now to where if you have, one particular use case is you have a lot of alcohol on hand, being able to have this sort of call and response with a voice assistant saying, 6 bottles of that, 8 bottles of that, 2 bottles of that, 22 bottles of that. And then not only is it capturing that data and then being able to present that back to you, emailing you a spreadsheet of it, but it also, that AI component kicks in and says, hey, you, what do you mean you only have 2 bottles of this? Did you not miss that you were supposed to reorder this at 5? And then like, oh, shoot. Okay, so reorder. All that, just that smoothing of everything, the smoothing of your operations through voice and AI, that's real, that's happening, and that's something to look forward to for your audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, that example of your technology talking to you and reminding you to order more Merlot, that's integrated into machine learning that's interpreting the buying customs and habits of that particular restaurant's guests. And some places it could take 6 months to use up the Merlot. Other places it's going to case every few days. So I'm getting now how voice is the gateway. It's to all of that machine learning. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might start with if you had 2 bottles on hand of Merlot, you're supposed to have 5, supposed to have 50.
Mhm.
Um, where did that threshold come from? At first, it might have come from your sales rep who's visiting you every week or 2 weeks or whatever. But ultimately, and the promise of AI is that instead of it's some third party telling you what to do, everything is reinforced through your own data and your own context and your own information. And so, when that sales rep comes and says it's time to reorder your Merlot, you say, stop, just hang on, please. And your AI have a conversation with your voice assistant, and your AI inform you, that looks at all your data all the time and says, you could wait another week. And by the way, your AI has access in many situations to every other type of data you've got, perhaps including your financials, and saying, look, you had a terrible week last week. You could reorder your Merlot right now, but honestly, you can probably skate on by one more week. I mean, these are conversations that AI will be having with you. This has always been a good week for you. The last 2 years in a row, this week right here, the 42nd week of the year, has been 22% higher than average for you. So you could end up waiting because, you don't necessarily need to have to, and your cash flow might be running low, and you had that person just quit, which we see from your labor matrix, and. So it's exciting. Yes, there's privacy concerns, as there always will be, but what you have to realize, and I think one of the big takeaways for your audience as well, is realizing that it's not deciding in a vacuum if I want to hang on to my privacy or not. Rather, it is this spectrum of, is the functionality and the utility being offered to me by the technology so much greater than any potential privacy, the expected value of any privacy problem, than sort of this probabilistic analysis, that I would be foolish not to engage with the technology. The productivity gains and everything is so much greater that I have to go that direction. That's the question. And that's what every restaurant will be confronted with in time.
I love that perspective because of course, we all share important data because we've decided it's worth sharing. It's worth the risk, and voice will be just the same. I really appreciate that. Bradley, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. The insights you've shared with our audience are invaluable, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again. Thanks for joining Restaurant Next.
Robert, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.